everybody. Welcome to the Rancho Bernardo District Museum Speaker Series. My name is Vincent Rossi. I'm the coordinator of the series. I'm very happy to see a nice crowd here for a distinguished speaker today. Let me just give you a quick description of our next program. We'll start off, we don't have a speaker in December because of holiday events here at the winery and holiday events for everybody. So we'll resume our season in January, and our speaker at that time, on January the 14th, will be Mark Carlson. He's a popular and award-winning writer and speaker. Some of you may, he's doing a talk on Pearl Harbor in December for Oasis. He'll be speaking here. He's one of his areas of expertise is aviation history, and he'll be speaking on the San Diego connection to Charles Lindbergh's 1927 New York to Paris flight. So mark that on your calendars for January. My speaker today, he's back there. He's spoken in the past at our museum. We're honored to have him again. Richard Carrico is a professor of American Indian Studies at San Diego State University. He's an eminent authority on the Native American experience in this county's history, author of books and a number of papers and research papers, an archaeologist and a historian, multifaceted expert on the subject, and as we subsequently learned, a winemaker, and a man who has turned his attention not only to winemaking, but to studying the history of winemaking in this county in his own way, and that will be his subject today. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Richard Carrico.
Thank you. So, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm actually not a doctor, and I don't play one on TV. I had started a PhD program many, many years ago, probably back in the Pleistocene in the Bronze Age. It was a long time ago, and then I quit it, basically. So I'm really glad to be here. This is the second time I've been here, and Vincent and Peggy and I have, over the last couple of years, talked about doing books in history and archaeology, and so I'm really, really glad to be up here. Indeed, I do make wine, and in fact, right now I have about how much is it right now? 50 gallons of Cabernet fermenting away, doing secondary fermentation. So 50 gallons is about 250 bottles. Modest, but if I drank a bottle a day, it would get me through the year. I've been known to do that. So this talk, as the way history works, and my good friend George Phillips in a hat there in the back, by the way, is actually knows far more about Indians than I do in many, many ways. And George has written a lot of books on local tribes. And if you're looking for a speaker down the road, you might think about George. He has a new version of his book, Chiefs and Challengers, that's out right now. Really, really good book. When I was first starting in this realm of studying Native Americans and San Diego history, George was very helpful for me, even though I hadn't met him, but just by reading his stuff. So it's kind of interesting how things go around in a circle. And he said he was driving by and he thought he would just, go slumming and come by here and see us. So there you go. But this started because I was making wine and I was living up in Ramona. I no longer live there. I live in Warner Springs. Ramona wasn't far enough away. I needed to drive even further. So now when I'm in Ramona, driving through, I'm halfway home. And I actually feel good about it. But I was starting to make wine, and there were a bunch of wineries in Ramona. I think at that time there were 8 wineries in Ramona. Now there's 40. About. That's what we're going to talk about. But they wanted to start what's called an AVA, where you set aside a geographic area, just like Sonoma, Napa, Carneros, and you say, we're going to make wines within this geographic area, and on a label, we're going to put that on there. And it's got some cachet to it. So it's called the Santa Maria Valley AVA, not Ramona, by the way. But to do that, you have to show history. You have to show that wine grapes have been grown there before, that somebody made wine there before. You can't just take a piece of land and go, we want to do this, because it's through the government. And you know how that works, right? That's the way it's set up. It's actually through the Food and Drug Administration, which will get me started. So someone found out I did history, and they said, can you help us write the history section of our application? It'll only be a couple of pages. Well, it turned out to be about 25 pages. And then I gave a PowerPoint on it, and then that turned into a short monograph, a little pamphlet I wrote, and now here we are. So this PowerPoint is in a book over there on the table to some degree as for sale. So this is, in the beginning, So one of the questions that comes up when people talk about wine in California is where did it start? And it actually started here in San Diego County. And it started not at that building, because that building wasn't built until about 1805. I don't care what they tell you on the tour. Father Sarah was never in that building. That's another talk. But it did start at Mission San Diego de Alcala in about 1774. People say 1769, because that's when the mission was established. And I don't want to burst any of your historical bubbles, but when the mission was first established, it was on Presidio Hill. So if they were growing grapes, and they weren't, it would be around Presidio Hill. And it stayed there until about 1774, for almost 5 years. Then it moved to Mission Valley, where it is today. And then they brought up rootstock from, of all places, Peru. From Peru up to Mexico City, to Laredo, and finally to San Diego County. So if we wanted the date for when they might have been first planting the vines, it's probably 1774. If you know anything about grapes and wine making, you cannot grow grapes the first year and then pick them and make wine out of them. They have to mature for 4 or 5 years. So the first wine probably came out of Mission San Diego in about 1779, 1780. Now you'll read other books and they'll use 1769 because that's convenient, but that's not very good history. Meanwhile, Mission San Gabriel had also been established, and they were in a better climate and better soil, and frankly, the Indians were less restive. This mission is going to be burned down the next year after they set it up by the Kumeyaay Indians. That did not happen in San Gabriel. And by the way, if you have any questions as we go along here, you can certainly just ask me. Well, this is Mission San Gabriel. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a quite beautiful mission. It's a very successful mission compared to down here, because the Gabrielino Indians, for one thing, were a little more docile, to use a better word perhaps. They were more accommodating. Whereas the Kumeyaay down here were not terribly accommodating, and they saw the mission as a potential trading partner. So what can you give us? And we'll give you something in return. And the answer was, well, the mission didn't have much to give them, frankly. And so that's obviously a whole other lecture. So the wine industry started in San Diego. By the way, most of the alcohol they made in San Diego, while they did make some Sacramento wine, most of it was actually a brandy, pretty high octane brandy, because it's hard to mess up brandy. Whereas it's really hard, it's really easy to mess up both white and red wine. We're not sure the grapes they were growing originally, but we believe it was a grape called Mission Grape, appropriately, which came by way of Peru, and it is a native of Spain, and it makes not very good wine. I believe there are 2 wineries in California that make Mission Grape wine, and I think they're both up in Sonoma, and they do it more as a novelty, but it doesn't have a lot of body to it. But if you distill it down and make brandy out of it and add some stuff to it, like alcohol, then you end up with something like, I don't know, 30 proof brandy, something like that. So that's what was going on here to begin with. So then we went from the Spanish period, and there are documents about the wine, and some people actually did talk well of the wine at Mission San Diego, but more so Mission San Gabriel. And there were vineyards. So if you know where the mission is today in Mission Valley, right there on Father Sarah Road or whatever it is, if you were standing at the mission and you looked outward where those apartment buildings are now, right before the San Diego River, that's where the vineyards were, because that way they could be watered by the San Diego River. So then we went through, however, the Spanish period, and we make a big deal out of Spain, as we should, and the Spanish period in San Diego County, but to put it in perspective, from the mission being constructed in 1769, by 1835, roughly 70 years later, it was over. It was over for the Spaniards. They had a Mexican Revolution in 1820. They had become Mexico. No one wanted to fund the missions anymore. So for all the kids we make suffer through 4th grade and build their little California mission or whatever, and all the talk about Uneva Rosera and all that, it's a 70-year period. I'm guessing there are people in this room pretty close to that. That'd be me. So I want to put that in reference because time kind of marches on. There was a Mexican Revolution, and then Mexico, of course, could not hold San Diego, or California for that matter, from us aggressive Americans. So we took it over. And just about that time, 1850-51, this fellow, Agustin Harthesy, lived here in San Diego County. And he was the sheriff for a while. In fact, some of his actions will lead to the Gar revolt. He will try to tax the Indians of San Diego County, even though the Constitution says you shall not tax Indians. But he didn't get that message. So he tried to tax the Indians, Gar revolted, and my friend George has written a very good book on all that. He also built the first jail in Old Town. So if you take a tour of Old Town, right there by the little jewelry shop, that's the first jail. The first 3 prisoners in the jail broke out within 2 weeks because he used really inferior mortar. They simply took their metal spoons, dug them over out, moved the bricks, and ran away. And at that point, the city of Old Town, if you will, the town of San Diego, the Pueblo, wanted to sue him. So he left town, just like Hatfield the Rainmaker, right? He left town. But before he left town, he did plant some grapes here in San Diego County. So we call him the first American winemaker, 1850-51, but not retail. We're going to get to who the first commercial winery was. It's probably somewhere you wouldn't even imagine. I didn't when I started this. So what happened to him? Well, let me tell you what he didn't do. You'll pick up some history books. I know this sounds like a complete disclaimer of history, but you'll pick up some history books and it will say he was the first one to bring Zinfandel, or otherwise known as Primitivo, over from Europe and planted here in San Diego. And his family has fostered that over the years in certain historians. We have no evidence that he did Primitivo. We only have evidence down here that he took mission grapes, cloned them onto some other graft, and made a wine that was maybe a little bit better. So he made some wine probably from El Cajon, the places out there, and sold it locally in jugs. But it wasn't a commercial winery per se. It was more just a way to make some money. He was always looking for ways to make money. So then he moved up to Sonoma, and once he got to Sonoma, he took his family up to Sonoma, and he started a winery that's still there today. If you go there, Buena Vista Winery. Makes pretty good wine, and they have a nice history of Augustine Arthur. He ran for Congress and became congressional elected person for Sonoma, and then he got tired of Sonoma and making wine, so he left his family. He went down to South America. He fell in a river and was eaten by a crocodile. See the things you learn? That's right. That's right. So that was the 1850s. And then, of course, we have the gold rush of 49, 50, and all these people pouring into California. And one of the people who moved out here in the 1880s, 1870s, was a French family called the Grand family. So if you're from Ramona, we have the Fred Grand rodeo ground, and there's the Fredrick Grand, this and that. So there are 3 French brothers who moved to San Diego in the late 1870s, 1880s. And by the way, you got to hang with me here. I don't do things chronologically. I do them like differently, which drives my students crazy. But out in Arkansas Canyon, where's that? Well, if you went up through toward Border Springs and you turned right and went down to Brabazon, and you turned right on S2, and you went through what's now called Shelter Valley. What did Shelter Valley used to be called? It was called Earthquake Valley. The real estate agents changed it. It's kind of hard to sell stuff in Earthquake Valley. So S2 then finally goes out through the beautiful little town of Ocotillo and takes you to Highway 8. So as you're making that ride on S2 and you're heading out towards San Felipe area, you would go past Arkansas Canyon. Fredrick Grand homesteaded out there about 80 acres and built this amazing stone wine cellar, which is still there. It's on fish and game property. You have to get special permission to do it. So we had Native Americans from the area, from the village of San Felipe, quarry all this stone. And so it's slightly below ground, but it kind of cut it into a hill. After the fires that were out there about a decade ago, this timber has burned out and some other of the doors burned off of it. But it's still there. It's still there. And no, that wine bottle was not part of it. That's a wine bottle I took that with me, thinking I might get thirsty. So Fred Grand, again, wasn't commercial. He made what's called a demijohn. It's several gallon, a big bottle, typically wrapped in some fiber to keep it from breaking. And he took up with a local Indian woman from the next village over named Florentina, and they had a couple children together. And we have his diary. If any of you know Judith Swink, Judith has actually translated his diary, and he gives, typical of the time, the weather every day, what the temperature is it frosty, what's my Florentina doing. There's a couple sexual innuendos in there that I won't go into. But he's talking about making wine, and then he takes it, puts it in his buckboard, and goes up the back way to Julian and trades it for axes and seed and things he needs. He was pretty well known It actually shows up in the Julian newspaper of the time. They'll say, well, Fred Brand was in town today. That means there'll be a lot of drunks on the street tonight. Basically, lock up your children. He made apparently a pretty potent wine. We don't know what percentage it was. So my hope is that in the future, Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife, whoever owns this, will allow more tours out here. This can be tied into a tour of the history of winemaking in San Diego County. What happened to Fred? He finally died several years later in the early 1900s. If you are a Marine, and if you are, thank you for your service. I assume there's some fellow veterans in this group. This is Rancho Santa Margarita. This is the Commandant's house today at Camp Pendleton. And the fellow who owned it at the time, Juan Forrester, had a very extensive vineyard. This is what we call, this is where I get into my what's my girlfriend call it? Cork dork. I'm going to become a cork dork for a minute. These are head-trained plants. You don't put them on trellises. You just let them grow out and they fold over, and they're much easier to pick. Tend not to get the same amount of grapes first because there's some shading involved and all that. So this still is not a commercial winery though. What time period are we talking about here? Probably 1880, 1876, not the same as Fredrick brand. So if you go to Commandant's house now, I think they have a little display about this vineyard and Mr. Forrester out there growing wine grapes. This is all for barter. And by the way, a lot of times when you read in the newspapers at the time and it talks about so-and-so's growing or has produced 8 tons of grapes, most of that's for raisins. You know, we're not a generation today that actually eats a lot of raisins. We used to as Americans. But back then, raisins were very big, and all the way through the 1930s and 40s, because it's a good source of fiber and sugar, just to eat them, and they last forever. So a lot of times when we read about grapes, it's not so much for winemaking. But he did, and he sold it on a very small scale. One of my goals in life is to erase the international border. So Trump and I probably don't agree on that exactly. But I'm not talking about a war, a wall, or that type of thing. What I mean is, if you're going to talk about history and Kumeyaay Indians and winemaking and gosh, all manner of things, historic families, the border doesn't make any sense. And so actually winemaking has been going on down there for a long, long time. I don't know if any of you have been to Rancho La Puerta, if you've got the bucks to go down there. $3,000 a week, I think it is, $3,500. I used to give lectures down there. I didn't pay. They actually paid me to come down and give lectures. But these are head-trained vines that are probably, according to Deborah Ziegler, who owns it, these are roughly 100 years old. Roughly 100 years old. They were there when she and her husband purchased the property. So again, there's no trellising. They just fold over. Sadly, unless they changed it recently, they're not making wine out of this, and they really should. It's just not something she wants to do. So they make grape juice. They make grape juice from 100-year-old Zinfandel vines. Yeah, that's just wrong. But they do it. So, these are Zinfandel. It's believed at least that these are Zinfandel. And once Agustin Harthesy got up to Sonoma, he did bring over some cuttings of Zinfandel. By the way, he did bring over some cuttings of Zinfandel. So here in Southern California, it looks like the first big commercial winery in Southern California, not San Diego County, was actually, if you drove up to Los Angeles and got on 101, right by the train station, well, if there's not protesters there today, but got by the train station, there's an exit called Vignes, V-I-G-N-E-S, Vignes, that takes you right to the train station, and it's one of my favorite restaurants, Philippe's, home of the French dip sandwich, right there. That was the first commercial winery down in Southern California, a Frenchman. And he did bring Zinfandel over, and he also brought Cabernet and a couple of others. But let's get here in San Diego County. So here's how history works. I was up at the Valley Center Historical Society doing research on this book, and the fellow there was very helpful. And I mentioned something about the first winery I thought was commercial, was out of Otay Mesa, Mr. Daneri. Out there on Otay Mesa in 1878 or something. He goes, oh no, it was here in Valley Center. I go, yeah, of course you're going to say that. If I was in Rancho Bernardo, they'd say it's Rancho Bernardo. If I'm in Poway, they're going to say Poway. And then he brought out some documents and some photos, and indeed it does look like the first commercial winery, that is somebody who was making it in large quantities, putting a label on it, and shipping it out for sale, was at Rancho Guajito in Valley Center. And his name was A.E. Maxey. And it looks like he started in 1870, which is about 6 to 8 years earlier than I had done. So sometimes you have these serendipitous things. So in the book, I talk a fair amount about Maxie. He was not nice to his Indian laborers. He actually had a couple of common law wives, and then when he died, their children by Indians. They didn't get anything. This building, parts of it, are still up at Metro Trujillo. This is the largest remaining Mexican period land grant in the area. It's intact. It's absolutely intact. One family owns it. One family owns it. They intend to develop it someday.
How big is it?
Yeah. So here's your first winery. You're going to be tested on this later. So I have 1871 there, because that photograph happened to be 1870, and he clearly, other photos that I saw, he was making wine, but I can't find any evidence that he actually brought it out and started selling it. So 1871. And then the second, the one I thought was first, was Emmanuel Daneri out on Otay Mesa. I'm going to show you a couple slides of his. So if you go out to the Otay area today, there's a street called Daneri, D-E-N-N-E-R-Y. That's a misspelling of his name. It's Daneri Road. Any of you ever go downtown back about 25 years ago off of Market Street? There was a place called McDinney's. I don't know if you remember McDinney's. It was one of my favorite places. Because when I was in high school, I was working for a moving company. If I went in there after work with my Ally Van Nuys shirt on, they would cash my check for the change at the end of it and let me drink. It's a good thing. So they're related to the Daenerys. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Daenerys. But if I went back there that night all cleaned up, in my little Montrose high school shirt, they wouldn't sell me anything. I had to have my shirt on and be cash my check. Okay, fine. Frenchman, so we'll talk about him. Theo Verlac, those of you from Ramona will see a slide about this. So the Verlac Adobe is now the home of the Ramona Pioneer Society. It's where they have their meetings in the barn right behind us, and we'll talk about that. Huge winery up in Vista. Those of you that might be from Vista, the Delphi Winery. Even when I was growing up, the corner of a certain couple streets up there in Vista were called Delphi's Corners, because it's where his ranch was, his farm, and his winery. And then George Brabazon, Monte Vista. Why is that in a different color? Because I gave a talk like this to the Alpine Historical Society, and I colored it in. Monte Vista Winery was in Alpine, right by the shopping center on Tavern Road. There's some apartment buildings right around the corner. That's where his vineyard is. And then George Ferrara, and gosh, here we are at the Rizos. So I used to say, until about 4 years ago, much to the chagrin of the Winery here, that the Ferrara Winery was the oldest still operating winery in San Diego County. And I believe that to be true. But they're no longer operating. So while people used to argue with me about it and say it's really the Rizzo family in Bernardo, now it's a moot point because they're out of business. So now it is the Bernardo Winery is the oldest one. So you in this area is still operating. Still operating. That's kind of faint praise because there's not very many still operating. Right? There you have it. So this was his little winery, Brabazon, Swiss-French fellow up in the Alpine area. This house is still there. And in fact, a friend of mine, a pretty good acquaintance, and my friend in the back of the room, George Phillips, a good friend of his, Jerry Lepetsky, had a vineyard on his property in Alpine, and the cuttings came from this vineyard from back in the 1880s, 1890s, from the Brabazon winery. This is very well known. He actually won medals at the Sacramento Fair and all this. So in this time period that we're moving through, from about 1880 to about 1910, we had more wineries than Sonoma in San Diego County, because they just hadn't caught on yet in Sonoma. Napa had some, and then Sonoma had some. So here's a quiz for you. What percentage of wine consumed in America do you think comes from Napa, Sonoma? 10%, 20%, 40%, 50%? Because it's certainly the first names that come to mind. About 12% by volume. By dollar, it's 38%. So where's it all come from? Fresno. Exactly. Two names come to mind. Modesto. Palo Rossi and Gallo. And Frenzia. They produce a phenomenal amount of wine produced in America, usually in big jugs or in boxes. Yeah, it's just one of those things, but Napa Sonoma gets all, well, as well they should, because they're making good wine. But at one time, this winery was out producing the top 2 or 3 in Sonoma. This guy was very, very productive. He also, I can't not have it, he always had Indian workers, and they would have these big festivals, and people would come up from San Diego, because it would be harvest season, right? And be hot down the coast or down El Cajon Valley. So you'd come up to Alpine, it was a little cooler, and typically they would pick in late September, early October, and then he would put a bunch of the grapes out in a big vat, and people would crush them with feet, just like I Love Lucy. Think of the I Love Lucy show, right? Except he had young Indian women from the El Capitan Grande Reservation in short skirts. This guy's a great marketer. And then he would say, well, we can't drink this wine today, but right over there, I happen to have last year's vintage or the year before. And so people would drink a phenomenal amount of wine and then make their way back towards El Cajon or San Diego without a DUI, apparently. So that's the one up there. And another man in Alpine was named Chappelle, sometimes spelled with a C. And he also hired a lot of Indian laborers to both prune for him, pick the grapes, and help process the grapes. And he had done that for about 20, 25 years. I believe he was 86, something like that. And he got sideways one afternoon with an Indian worker. The Indian worker wanted to be paid in wine, not in money, because the wine was more important to him. Because what some Indians would do is they would work for Mr. Chappelle or Brabazon. He would give them wine, then they would take it and water it down, cut it, and then rebottle it and sell it. In this time period, you didn't buy bottles of wine. That's actually a relatively modern thing. It usually came in casks or big jugs. If you traveled through Europe, you probably know still to this day in France, if you want to buy wine in the villages, you take an empty vessel. It can be a gas can, hopefully not, but it can be any kind of a vessel. You go to the town vintner, and he's got a spigot coming out of the wall, and he fills it up and charges you $2. And usually it's really, really good wine. That used to be legal in California, then they outlawed it, and now it is actually legal again. There are some urban wineries now that you can take your own jug in. Because the theory was, if they can do it for beer, growlers, why can't you do it for wine? Well, because it's wine. Really? Does that make any sense? So I'm waiting for the day when you can take it in and fill it up with tequila. I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime. So they got arguing, and basically the Native American from Capitan Grande took an axe out and hacked poor Mr. Chappelle to death. And then he tried to load up a lot of wine apparently on his horse and go back to the Capitan Grande reservation, but his horse broke down, and they caught him, and he went to San Quentin. Making wine's tough. If you've not been to the Bancroft Ranch House in Spring Valley, you really should go out there sometimes. They give tours. This house has a really interesting history. It's made out of a ship. It was made out of a ship about 1860. Lumber was really hard to come by in San Diego County. And the gentleman who owned the house at the time, Rufus K. Porter, found out about a ship that had gone aground down in San Diego Bay. So he got some Indian workers. They went down there with carts. He bought the ship, dismantled it, brought it up to Spring Valley on what's now Highway 94, more like Federal Boulevard, and built this house. I took a dig class here, an archaeology class in way back, last century. Actually, it was 1970, I think it was. And I was a Renaissance major. I was going to go into Renaissance and medieval history. And I took a dig class at this site because it's sitting on a big Indian village. And then the next week, I went back and changed my major. I said, I'm going to go into anthropology. My poor history professors were beside themselves. And they said, well, finish up. You only need 6 more units. So I did, then I went back and took anthropology. But for this talk, what's important about this? Rufus K. Porter is the son of the founder of Scientific American. And Rufus K. Porter was very much into horticulture. He came out, had 160 acres out here. There's a spring that's still there today, that holds up. And he had very well-watered land. So he planted all kinds he tried mangoes, he tried guavas, he tried all kinds of things, but he tried grapes, and he was very successful. He was very influential in planting the grape that might have been the favorite of your mother or grandmother's, muscat. Okay, remember muscat? Kind of sweet the way we make it, not so much in Europe. So he planted lots of muscat. So he's one of the originators of white wine making in San Diego County. Most people make red. Why would you make red? It's a lot easier, trust me, because it's dark. You can't see the imperfections in it. White wine, there's all kinds of magic you have to do. Plus, white wine doesn't last as long. So this is his house. It is part of the Spring Valley Historical Society. If you ever do collateral things where you go on tours, they'll give you a really good tour of this place. I'll show you where Richard Carrico dug in 1970. There used to be a little plaque there. It was a joke. It was a joke. and it was very shallow, like I didn't really do anything. And that's not true. My pit was really, when they did this little shallow. So, Richard Carrico dug here in 1970. My students would come back and say, really? I go, no, that's not true. That was a big pit, a deep pit. All right, so here's the largest pro-Prohibition winery, Otay Winery and Distillery. You can read this pretty much for yourself. So Manuel Daneri and his son built this amazing winery out off the Otay River. And they made port, as that keg is showing there. So port is something where you reduce it down in wine and you heat it and you do all kinds of things to it. He's got all kinds of fancy liquors as well. So while his winery is out in Otay, and he would come and pick you up, by the way, this is like pre-marketing. This is like some, Aristotle said there's nothing new under the sun. So instead of big coaches, big buses, he would send carriages to downtown San Diego. He would pick you up, you paid a fee, he took you to his winery, you tasted wine all day, you got farm-to-table produce, and back then, it was all farm-to-table, right? Like my grandmother said once, what's this thing about natural foods? When I was growing up, it was all natural. I go, I know. Velveeta is not. Okay, so they would take you out there, feed you, you would buy lots of wine because you got, quote, free wine, then they'd shove you in the wagon and drive you back to San Diego. You could sleep all the way, and they would kind of just deposit you at the U.S. Grant or wherever. Good marketing. He was one of the first ones that had a big tasting room. He thought, you need to get the people in and have big tasting rooms. To this day, although it's changing, if you go to France, a lot of the really large wineries, especially in small villages, don't have much of a tasting room. They don't think that's the way to do it. That's just wrong to be giving away your product. Just come in and buy a bottle. Sit out on the patio and drink it if you want more rice and more. They're changing because we have corrupted them. As Americans go, who's your tasting room? Who's your little shot glasses? Okay, so we know a lot about this guy. Why 1916? Why do you think he went out of business? This is not because of Prohibition. The flood. So this was his winery. These are big. I think if you go over here to the Bernardo winery, they have certainly some this size and even bigger. But I mean, this guy is doing serious winery. I think the last I saw before this bad thing happened to him in 1916, the flood, he was making something like 10,000 gallons of wine a year. Well, there's 5 bottles in every gallon, that's 50,000 bottles of wine. For this time period, that's a lot. There are boutique wineries in San Diego County who don't make that much. I don't think anybody on Highland Valley Road makes that much. There's nice little wineries up there. And this was how he delivered it to your house. If you ask for a bottle of wine, this is what you got. A basket wrapped around a bottle. That's a 5-gallon bottle. It's called Carboy, so that's 25 bottles of wine. 25 bottles of wine. Then you can put it in your own bottle. Lots of restaurants would buy from him, and then they had their own label. U.S. Grant Hotel had their own label. Coronado had their own label. Because, again, little bottles just weren't common back then. Quite the operation. And then, there's supposed to be a space here. This is not like Irish or something. So 2 miles down on the Otay River, these things floated by, and people stood on the bank after the big 1916 flood and watched these go by. I should know how large that is. I want to say that's 500 gallons. That's probably about right, because a barrel is 50 gallons. That's about 500 gallons, so 2,500 bottles of wine. All of them went down the river. Some of his workers died, they drowned. His entire vineyard, which covered 12 acres, I think, was completely covered in gravel. Completely covered in gravel. And so he just gave up. He just gave up. What's kind of interesting about this, though, they had to call in the National Guard to protect these things because people were out there with drills and bottles. Yeah. There you go. I gotta change that. No screwing inside. Okay. Cavorting in the vineyard. So this kind of marketing right before Prohibition got really popular of showing young women and the grapes and wine. What they were trying to do was separate wine from hard liquor, because America has had a tumultuous history with rum and with the hard liquors, demon rum and all that. And obviously, certain populations drank a lot of beer, Germanic people in particular, Italians like their wine, and the French. So by showing young women holding grapes, by showing young women drinking a glass of wine over dinner, they were trying to move it away from the hard liquor thing, if you will, and also by showing it with food. You don't sit down and always drink cocktails with food, martini lunches in the 60s, 50s. So this was part of the marketing. This is not, in interest of full disclosure, this is not in San Diego County. This is a winery called Otay, and it's up near Oxnard. It's where the airport is today. Did I say Oxnard? Ontario. Starts with an O. It's in California, where the Ontario airport is today. So some of you might know Lum. Lum is like one of the greatest winemakers in San Diego County. He's taught a lot of things. He goes up there, and there's still some old vineyards near the airport in open space. He picks the grapes every year, brings it back, and makes wine out of it. He calls it Freeway Red, because it's right next to the freeway. And he's actually been arrested by the highway. So just up north of us here, for years there was the Grape Day Parade, and then it stopped, and now they're having it back again. But wine is huge, and Escondido Escondido had more wineries than anywhere else in San Diego County because of all the Italian families who settled there, and because it was cheap land, well watered, and labor was from the Indian reservation and all that. So this is one of the more popular wineries of the time. We can get you. By the way, the next slide in this, this is from the Pioneer Room or the California Room at the Escondido Public Library. The next slide in the series is they were given awards for best float. So I just want to show you how times don't necessarily change, or maybe they do, hopefully. The second runner-up for best float was the KKK float. And there's a really good picture of these guys in their hats and their crosses. So really, you didn't know that about your town if you didn't Escondido, did you? Yeah, there you go. And then I like this one. Boris is on, I think this building is still there on 7th Street. So I want to point out, these were the big wines of the time. A Burgundy, which has nothing to do with French Burgundy. So here's what Americans have done. This drives French people crazy. When I had some French foreign exchange students living with me for a while, and we would go somewhere to buy something, and they would see a big jug of Gallo Burgundy, California Burgundy. Hardy Burgundy, exactly. Like Red Mountain. I remember Red Mountain from high school. So Hardy Burgundy, you're right. And he would go, "This is not possible. You cannot call this Burgundy if this is from here." And I go, "Well, worse than that. I'm going to buy some and you taste it." This is because Burgundy is Pinot Noir. If you get a bottle of wine from Burgundy, it's one of three grapes: Gamay, Beaujolais, which we're about to have that whole thing in November, or it's Chardonnay, white, or it's Pinot. That's all they grow, except for their own table. So they don't have to say Pinot Noir. You know it's Pinot Noir. Why would you name a wine after the grape? That's stupid. Except if you're in California, right? But because we knew Burgundy was nice and people liked it, we called any red grape Burgundy. Most of this is a grape, by the way, called Carignan. It grows like a weed. Claret. Who knows what claret is? Actually, if you read any of the Hornblower series or books written in the Dickens period, claret is Bordeaux. It's a Cabernet Sauvignon Bordeaux. I'm about to get into cork dorkdom, so I'll stop right there. It's from the right bank. Okay. Zinfandel, huge. This is California's grape. So while it's not native to here, for many years it was the most grown grape. What's he saying here with dry muscat? He's saying it's not sweet. That's what dry means. The sugar's all gone away. That's dry muscat. And then you can see the ones above there. And this happens to be a grape. The fellow that I mentioned up in Los Angeles, Mr. Vignes, he kind of pioneered this Angelica. You can still buy this. It's kind of a sweet dessert wine. It's about 16% alcohol, 18% alcohol, and that's what we call residual sugar. It's very sweet. It's like a dessert wine. So think peach cobbler and a little glass of this. You only want a little glass, by the way. It's too sweet and it's got a lot of alcohol. So hey, bring your own container. You know, we're not selling bottles, but bring your own container and we'll fill it up. And then you can see the price. I've adjusted this for inflation in another talk and another paper I've been working on. And basically, wine has stayed pretty much stable. Pretty much stable. Do that with gasoline. So when I was in high school, gas was 22 cents a gallon, I think, before Jimmy Carter. All right, 22 cents a gallon. And now it's whatever it is, 2 something. But my wage in high school was $1.05 an hour. That was minimum wage, working at a fast food restaurant. So if I happen to be making $25 an hour now, I'm making $25, 25 times more than I was then. 25 times 20 cents, right? Gas is cheap. Get over it. And if you've been to Europe, you know that. All right. So this was very, very common, and the Boer family was very big, very important. Remember Brookside? Anybody? Yeah, up and down California. This is the one in Escondido. So if you go north on 15 and you get off on Old 395 at your, what's it called, Parkway? Something Parkway. Yeah, that one. And right before you start getting truly into Escondido, this was a very popular one because of its setting. There was one in Pacific Beach, there was one in Bonita, there was one here in Escondido, and one in El Cajon. Thank you. Now it's the dental office, by the way.
Yes.
This is it now, the one here in Escondido. So it went from being faux mission style to faux Tudor. And now, this is a Christmas shop, right? I mean, they do a lot of other stuff. But if you're looking to get your Christmas stuff, go there. So they took, I want to back that up. So they took and squared everything off. Yeah, so they took the mission, the quote mission style, Moorish style, curvatures, and then squared it off and put some beams in, and it's Tudor. Voila! Yeah. So Brookside, for a long time, was the largest seller of wine in California, in fact, in the West Coast, because they had all these places, and they also exported a lot out of California. Almost all of their wine came from between Modesto and Fresno and Hanford from the Central Valley. They didn't make really very, very good wine. Now, a fifth generation member of the Brookside family, the first people who owned Brookside, and started a new winery. It's called Next Gen, or Fifth Gen, or Gen 5, or something like that. And he's going to bring Brookside back, but not with the Brookside name. So here's the 1950s and 60s. So we moved kind of through the time periods here. Wineries got set up. Prohibition killed us, right? Prohibition killed us. But in interviewing some of the Ferrara family members 15, 20 years ago, but also some old Italian men I knew down on Point Loma, I asked them about Prohibition. How'd that work out for you? He said, wow, we didn't care. Because most of the people living on Point Loma, who were either Portuguese or Italian, made their own wine. It was legal to make your own wine. You could make up to 250 gallons a year, but you couldn't sell it. Well, in the case of here, Bernardo, with the Rizzo family and the Ferrara at the Ferrara winery, they make sacramental wine for the churches. So I've kind of added up. Those people were drinking a lot of sacramental wine in the churches. Every major winery was making quote sacramental wine. And one of the old guys at Ferrara, actually the old woman, told me, oh yeah, there used to be these guys, they would show up in a panel truck in the time period, dressed like priests. And they had a heavy Italian accent. And they would buy the wine for the church, and then they would go away. All right. And of course, back east, if you were wanting to make wine back east, because you were being shut off from it back east, except for the Finger Lakes area, out here in California, we would ship you a box of grapes, a big box of grapes, cooled in a cool train. And on the side of the box of grapes, these are wine grapes, not raisin grapes, it would say, under no circumstances do this. Let these ferment, press the juice out of them, strain it, and add a little bit of sugar. Don't do this. So, unfortunately, most of the wineries down here dried up and blew away. So after Prohibition, you only had two, Ferrara and this one, Bernardo. All the others went out of business. Up in Sonoma, Napa, they did a little better. So I point this out because if you were to go into a store, and some of you in this time period might have, these used to be the wines of the time. Sauvignon Blanc was kind of coming along. I don't know, Great Riesling was pretty big, especially a lot of servicemen went over to Germany and came back and liked Rieslings. This tasted nothing like a German Riesling, by the way. And then we had one of the most popular was Burgundy, which could be any number of red grapes. It certainly wasn't always Pinot. It could be all these different things. This until 10 years ago was the most grown grape in California, Carignan. First wine I made 20 years ago was Carignan from Fallbrook. What's missing on this list? What's the favorite white wine of today?
Chardonnay.
Chardonnay. oaky, buttery, toasty, malolactic, fruit bomb Chardonnays. No one drank Chardonnay back then. I don't think there was hardly even Chardonnay grapes planted here. If you wanted white wine, people drank Sauvignon Blancs. So this is a white Sauvignon, this is a green Sauvignon. It's just a matter of how long you leave the wine on the grape. Many white wines are made out of red grapes. The juice is neutral. If you leave the skins on it turns red. You can have a white Pinot.
So Sauterne is not a grape.
Sauterne is actually a grape.
It is.
Yeah, it is a grape. It's a grape named after a region. It's actually, they've done DNA on it. It's a weird clone. The French have taken so many plants and grown them together and spliced and cut. Yeah. It's like the one we call Zinfandel. In Europe, this is called Primitivo. So if I said Chianti, again, that's not a grape, it's a region. So when you used to go to Pernicanos and get your little basket wicker thing of Chianti with your spaghetti and all that, that's actually a Sangiovese. But in Europe, they choose not to name it after the grape, whereas over here we do. And so you go to places today, and they'll say Sangiovese. And then if it's high in Sangiovese, they'll say Brunello, which is a small area within Chianti that makes Sangiovese. I'm teaching a wine class in a couple of weeks, so I'm cycling. So there are the top 5. Chablis is, again, another region in France, and it's actually a Riesling. And Chablis was very popular when I was growing up. I remember big jugs. My mother had big jugs of Chablis. So I asked, what's missing? Okay. So here's what, if I were doing a map, and I was going to show you the historic San Diego County wine country, there'd be a big blob around Alpine. There'd be a smaller one down by Otay, because there were only about 3 wineries down there. A couple of them Vista, but the biggest blob would be Escondido, with probably 12 to 13 wineries. A couple around here. There was a couple off of Poway Road and Rattlesnake Canyon. The Iavelle family made really good wine back in Poway. And then, strangely enough, back in Lozura, the last bonded winery, that is the most recent bonded winery in San Diego County, is in Lozura. Way out there, there's a group of people called Highway 94 Vintners Association. They just, I don't know, Highway 94 Vintners. And then up in San Marcos.
I grew up in Lozura. I don't know where you are.
It's where the post office was.
Oh,
The old ones is where the post office.
The old one?
And the new one just opened. Yeah, I'm not sure they even have a tasting room.
Yeah.
I usually do a sunset at the end, because that way I know I'm done. I know I'm done. So we, at one time, right before Prohibition, had roughly, and I say very roughly, 35 to 40 wineries, which was more, in fact, than Sonoma. Then we went to 2 after Prohibition. Then after the war, the wineries here tried to get back on their feet, but frankly, by then, people were into branding, and between all the, what we call the ocean of wine coming out of the Central Valley with the Rossi family and with Gallo, people down here really couldn't compete very well. Plus, we became more of a cocktail culture and then beer culture, and wine was considered kind of either low-brow down on 5th and Market with a paper bag around it, or it was high-end, in Westgate with a sommelier. So wine kind of fell away. Of course, now there's been a resurgence. So from roughly 35 to 40 wineries right before Prohibition, we today have 113 wineries in San Diego County, bonded wineries. When I started this book 5 years ago, we had 60. And one reason it kept taking so long is I kept talking to people and said, oh, well, you got to go do this, you got to go do this. So this has been basically a PowerPoint derived from that book that goes obviously into a lot more detail. So what's the future of wine and winemaking in San Diego County? It's not getting the attention that beer is, because beer is obviously cheaper, and in many ways we are a beer drinking culture here in America, and San Diego is becoming the craft brewery capital of America. And of course now a couple of breweries here are starting breweries in Austria and in Germany. So it gets all the press, and it's the hipsters and all the cool people who are out drinking craft beers and watermelon flavored IPAs. No, I actually saw that. I went to a beer tasting last week. And my favorite beer happens to be Sculpin. I really like Sculpin. and now they have one called grapefruit sculpin. If I want grapefruit in my beer, I'll put it in there. And now it's just starting to bleed over into here. You're now starting to get some wineries that are infusing their wine with chocolate flavor, with grapefruit, with all these other things. I'm a purist. I just want it to be what it is. So I'll be glad to answer any question. I say this because when I teach a class on wine analysis, and somebody will say, "What's your favorite wine?" It's the one in my hand at the time. The answer to that for me is, don't get all wrapped up in all this stuff about bouquet and essence and mouthfeel and aftertaste and tannic acid and malolactic. I mean, that's all good and it's all real at some level. But basically find something that you like, and it doesn't matter what the cost of it is, but it's also, I drink most of my wine with food, and that is a whole different thing. And so when I do some classes, I'll have people just drink wine without food for a while, not enough to affect them very much, and then I'll bring out some food to go with it, and it brings out very different tastes in both the food and the wine. So that's what I mean about without serious contemplation. And by the way, the title of my book is Wine on Lees. I've got a distributor, and she hates that title, so no. Wine on the Lees, Well Refined. Wine on the Lees, Well Refined, a history of wine and winemaking in San Diego County. And she said, why didn't you just use the bottom part and not that top part? What the hell does that mean? Well, when we make wine, and it's filtering naturally, gunk comes in the bottom. It's called the lees, L-E-E-S, lees, that's the lees. And the way I make my wine is I then siphon off the juice and leave the gunk in the bottom, which is dead yeast and parts of skins and God knows spiders, all kinds of stuff. Okay, that's the lees. But you leave it on the lees for a while because it imparts flavor to it. I don't know about the spiders, but it imparts flavors to it. And then you let it sit for about 6 months, and then a little bit more sinks down, and then you suck that off, and finally you end up with perfectly pure, clean wine. No chemicals, no filters. That's how I make my wine. So that happens to be a quote out of the Bible, of all things, that someone said, really, you, the Bible? And of wine on the lees, well refined, was Isaiah defining what a good life was. It means when you've made your wine, and it's on the lees, and it's well refined, meaning it's getting clean, that's the perfect life. So that's the title of the book. Did I ever put that in the book? No, I forgot. So I sell these books and people send me emails. Okay, I got your book, I read it, I really like it. What is that title? So the next edition I may, in fact, change it. So thank you very much. I can answer any questions.
What became of Ferrara?
The next generation just didn't want to do it anymore.
But I mean, what is it now?
I actually don't know. When I went by, the gates were locked, and
Yeah,
I knew they were going downhill when I went there for a wine tasting, and they gave you the wine in little specimen cups, little plastic specimen cups. That's not exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've heard somebody wants to start it back up. There are still a little bit of their vineyards left, but like this place, they've sold most of it off for subdevelopment for land. Yeah. When I did an archaeological survey for a lot of houses back here, when old man Rizzo was alive, and we came and drank a phenomenal amount of wine with him afterwards, I remember that. And I said, so you're going to rip out all these vines? And he goes, well, yeah, I'm not making any money off of it. We need to build houses. This is 1968, 69. And I said, who would ever come up here and live? Here I am. Yes, sir.
I've asked this question in a number of places. I'm interested. Say we're walking down a row of grapes, say typical Zinfandel, they're planted in a row, and it's, a normal year. How many feet do we go down that road to make one bottle?
One plant.
One plant?
One plant. One plant more than 10 years of age will produce at least a bottle.
Okay, and that's spread out over
Right.
so maybe 5 feet.
Yeah.
6 feet.
Yeah. Why do I know this? Because I made a lot of wine, and I helped my friend years ago plant a vineyard, and he was bummed out because for the first few years he wasn't getting a lot of fruit. It was also some different years. And then 2 years ago, he had, I got to do the math on this, he has 200 plants, and we got about 8 pounds per plant, and it takes about 8 pounds of grapes to make a bottle of wine
751.
because of the filtration.
Okay.
So right now at home, I've got a 200 liter, for those of you not on the liter system, 40 gallon stainless steel vessel. I've got wine in it, so I've got 40 gallons of wine. But right now, probably 8 or 10 gallons of that is residue that I'm going to throw away. It's going to become compost for my garden. But yeah, roughly 8 plants. It varies. If you're like one of these whack job perfectionists, a guy named, what's his name, Graham, up in Los Osos area, he drops most of his fruit. So as it's growing, he goes in, he has his Mexican workers, and they do what's called dropping it. They cut it off, and he ends up with about 2 to 3 pounds per tree, per vine, because he wants it all concentrated in there. So he produces very little, but his wine sells for $120 a bottle, so he can get it back. You know. I don't have any vines right now, by the way, because when I moved to Warner's, after I left Ramona and then moved to Spring Valley for a few years, I toyed doing a vineyard again. If you grow grapes, you're essentially a farmer. I'm not a farmer. So I buy my grapes. Somebody else goes to all that trouble, gets stung by bees, worries about their water bill, trims the canopy, drops some fruit. I show up, I buy half a ton, I make wine out of it. That's much better. So I'm a winemaker, not a wine grower. Grape grower. Yeah. Yes?
You mentioned stainless. Do you not oak age in barrels, or do you use stainless?
I'm lazy. First of all, I don't like a lot of oak, but what I do is I've got some little, I gotta go from liters and back and forth. I've got some roughly 6-gallon little wooden barrels, which ironically enough, I could almost buy a 50-gallon cheaper. Small things cost more sometimes. I don't know if you have an RV. If your refrigerator goes out in your RV, it will cost you more than if you went in and bought a brand new Frigidaire. So these little ones cost $300 for a 6 to 7 gallon. So I do some of that, but I also, because I took a lot of classes at UC Davis and learned how to cheat the way a lot of wineries do. You can buy oak powder. They actually take oak wood, they toast it, they grind it up, they sell it in bags, and you sprinkle it in there. It's magic dust, they call it magic dust. You sprinkle it in there, ultimately it goes to the bottom, I siphon it off, and in blind taste I've gone to my friends and I go, the ones that are snobby, and I say, so are you getting French or American oak out of this? And they're going, I'm definitely getting French. And I go, that's right, it is French. What do you think, medium, heavy, or light toast? Ah, medium. Yeah, it's all true. Here's the bag it came from. Lots of people in America do this. It's against the law in France. It's against the law. You cannot add sugar to your wine in France, nor can you irrigate. If they catch you irrigating, and they do occasionally do this, or when I was over there, a friend of mine who has a vineyard outside of Bordeaux, it was a very wet year. Was it 97? I think it was here. He put down plastic sheeting to make the water run off of his vineyard because it was eroding it. And the authorities knew this. They just watched it. He had a great harvest. He harvested, he fermented, and then they confiscated it.
Wow.
And they sold it and gave money to charity. You probably only do that once in your career, right? And you go, oh, okay, who turned me in? My neighbor. My neighbor. Yeah. So I do a little oaking. I don't do what's called malolactic acid. If you want to really soften like a UC Davis started this. So malolactic means like milky, lactic. And what it does is it makes it taste very, very milky, if you will. Kind of heavy, cloying, and a lot of, and I'm not saying this in a misogynistic way, but of the women I have hung out with for the last 10 years, many of them like malolactic, buttery, toasty Chardonnay. Toasty meaning oak barrel, buttery meaning malolactic. And they like that softness of it all. I hate those Chardonnays. I like it crisp. Like in France, they rarely put their Chardonnays in oak. So people go over there and get a Burgundy, a white Burgundy, and they go, oh, this is terrible, what grape is this? Well, this is Chardonnay grape, but we put it in stainless steel tanks. They do some oaking now because that's what Americans want, but they export most of it. Yeah.
What's wrong with irrigating? Is it because it's not natural weather?
What's what?
Irrigating, why would they not allow?
They're French.
They want the rain, I mean, it's got to be natural.
It's because that's how it was done in 1540.
Oh.
I mean, literally. So there are these groups in France. I love France, but man, there are these groups in France that were set up back in the 1680s, 1700s. And they were wine guilds. And they were set up to ensure that France only made good wine and that the average person couldn't make it. Basically, back when the estates were really large, because what's happened over the years is in France, the children of the deceased person all inherit the vineyard equally, and it's all divided up. So a couple of the vineyards I went to were like 5-acre vineyards. And the next one over was 5 and 6 and 8, and they all went to the same place to have the wine made, but they were all bottled and done differently and had different people's names on them. And these are families that fought and killed each other. So when they did this guild, they came up with rules. Of course, irrigation wasn't common back then anyhow for grapes, but they came up with all these rules. You can only pick at a certain time. There are wine specialists that come from Paris and go to all the regions, you know, Burgundy, Champagne, the Loire Valley, Bordeaux, and they come and they stay a while, and then they tell you when it's time to pick. You don't make that decision.
Government protecting us.
It's a government. It is very much a government. Yeah. And there's all kinds of things. But I'm saying, like, no one ever cheats. They're human. And so somebody did a study of how much sugar got imported into France in a given year. It's far more than is being used anywhere in restaurants and homes. It's showing up in big tanker trucks in liquid form at wineries late at night. But if you're caught. Yeah, they're very protective of it. They're very protective. And by the way, in California, there are a few wineries who are still allowed to use the word champagne and a couple of Burgundies, because when those laws were passed and everybody in the world agreed to them, that you can't call a Stilton cheese Stilton unless it's made in Stilton. You can't call it a Cameron Bay unless it's made in Cameron. When that was going on during Prohibition, we simply ignored it because we weren't making any wine, so we never signed the treaty. But if you started a winery right now and wanted to make what we call champagne, a sparkling hot wine, you cannot legally sell in California champagne. But if you already were making it in the past, you can. Since Gallo was already making Hardy Burgundy, they still call it Burgundy. And every year the French send a letter to California and say, you need to stop doing that. And we do this all the time. I mean, food is even more commonly that way. I'm trying to get some British cheeses. And Roquefort is a great example. It drives them crazy. My foreign exchange student, when I opened a jar of alleged Roquefort and put it on his salad, he went, what is this? I said, well, that's Roquefort. He goes, no, someone threw up in your... Or the mustards, French Dijon mustards. I brought out my Dijon mustard. I was all happy. I got it from the special. And he goes, I've never seen this before. I go, sure you have. That's Dijon. He goes, no, this is brand. Never. It says biggest selling in France. I have never seen this. Right? And then I go to Europe, and what's the biggest selling beer on TV commercials? Heineken. There's not a lot of people in Europe drink Heineken. There you have it. Anyway, now you know everything I know. Any other questions?
How much is your book?
Huh?
How much is the book?
How much is the book? Well, special.
Yeah.
Special, it's $15 and I pay the taxes. So it's normally $16.95. In about 3 weeks, you can probably get it cheaper on Amazon.com. I'm still negotiating with them. But not autographed, indeed, not autographed.
We'll take a copy.
It's going to be in Barnes & Noble and a couple of other places.
Yeah, and a Kindle version, digital.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Once this one sells out, then I'm going to go into a Kindle version. Yeah. There you have it. Thank you very much. Great audience.